An unexpected invitation. The starship rumbled through the dark expanse of space, its engines thrumming steadily as it cruised past a distant nebula. Captain Elias Carter sat in his chair, the view of the cosmos reflecting in his eyes. A veteran of many spacefaring expeditions, Elias was known for his quick thinking and adaptability, traits that had served him well in encounters with alien species throughout the galaxy. But nothing could have prepared him for the transmission that blinked on his console. A hologram flickered to life before him, revealing a tall, regal figure. Her features were sharp yet striking, with a crown of horns sweeping back from her forehead, and her skin was an iridescent blue that shimmered with every movement. She wore a robe of dark purple, accentuated by silver patterns, marking her as royalty. This was Queen Exira, ruler of the Hetharans, a species known for their intellectual prowess and rigid cultural practices. Her gaze was steady and commanding. "Captain Carter of Earth," she said in a voice both melodic and authoritative, "I extend an invitation from the Hetharan Empire." Elias straightened, his brow furrowing slightly. "Queen Exira, it is an honor. How can I be of service?" Styra's lips curved into a subtle smile, though there was something in her expression that suggested the request was anything but simple. "It has come to our attention that humans possess certain physical adaptability. You are known across the galaxy for your ability to thrive in various environments and circumstances. Our species is curious about this trait." Elias blinked, trying to process what she meant. "Curiosity is a fine thing, but what exactly are you asking, Your Majesty?" Styra's eyes gleamed with a mix of intrigue and amusement. "I wish to conduct an experiment. My twin daughters, Princesses Kayla and Zhora, are of age to select a mate. However, their potential partners have proven inadequate in their attempts to meet our unique physical expectations. Humans, on the other hand, are said to be capable of adapting to any situation. I would like to test this theory." Elias nearly choked on his own breath. "Wait, are you suggesting?" "I am suggesting that you, Captain Carter, assist in a royal trial. The survival of your species' reputation may depend on it." For a moment, silence filled the cockpit. Elias wasn't sure if this was a diplomatic nightmare or the most bizarre request he'd ever heard. Still, he knew he couldn't refuse a direct request from Hetharan royalty without potentially offending one of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. "I will consider the honor, Queen Sarah," he managed, his mind racing with what this might entail. Hira nodded, as if fully expecting his compliance. "Excellent. We will make arrangements for your arrival. The trial begins in 2 cycles." As the hologram flickered out, Elias slumped back in his chair, running a hand through his hair. His ship hummed softly, but the quiet was deceptive. His next mission would be anything but calm. He could only imagine what kind of trial awaited him in the heart of the Hetharan Empire. Arrival at the Hetharan Empire. Elias Carter stood at the helm of his ship, watching as the majestic world of Hethara came into view. It was a sight to behold, an immense planet of swirling purple and blue clouds with towering crystalline structures that pierced the sky. The atmosphere shimmered with iridescence, and beams of light danced across the surface, casting intricate reflections across the vast landscape. From this vantage point, it was clear that Hethara was a world of advanced technology and ethereal beauty. As the ship descended into the planet's orbit, Elias felt the gravity shift and his systems adjusted accordingly. A message pinged through his console, permission to land at the royal spaceport. He couldn't help but feel a mix of curiosity and unease. The last few days had been a whirlwind of preparation for this royal trial, but despite the briefing, he still had no idea what exactly to expect. The landing was smooth, and as the ship's ramp lowered, Elias was greeted by a sight even more stunning than he had anticipated. A delegation of Hetharans stood waiting, each of them tall, elegant, and dressed in robes of shimmering fabric. At their forefront was a familiar figure, Queen Exira, her regal presence unmistakable. Standing beside her were 2 figures that immediately caught Elias' attention. These must be her daughters. Kayla and Jorah were near mirror images of each other, with sleek, chiseled features and skin that gleamed like polished silver. Their long, flowing hair was an exotic shade of deep violet, cascading in waves over their shoulders. They both wore intricate gowns that seemed to ripple with energy, designed to showcase their graceful forms. Yet, there was a sharpness to their gaze, a focused intensity that made Elias feel as if they were already sizing him up. "Captain Carter," Queen Sarah greeted, her voice smooth and authoritative. "Welcome to Hethara. My daughters, Kayla and Jorah, will be your companions for the duration of your stay." Kayla stepped forward first, her eyes narrowing slightly as she examined Elias. "So this is the human our mother spoke so highly of. I've heard many things about your species." Elias smiled awkwardly, trying to remain diplomatic. "I hope some of it was good." Jorah joined her sister, her tone more curious than critical. "They say humans can endure extremes, both physical and mental. Is that true?" Elias shrugged, feeling the weight of their stares. "We adapt. It's kind of our thing." Queen Sarah clasped her hands in front of her. "You will have the chance to prove that soon enough. My daughters have prepared a series of trials to test your adaptability, strength, and other qualities. You will begin shortly." Before Elias could respond, a small hovercraft approached. The vehicle was sleek and silent, floating just above the ground, and a driverless control panel blinked, beckoning them inside. Elias was ushered into the craft, Kayla and Jorah joining him on either side. As the doors closed, he felt the hum of the engine as it sped off through the crystal city. The journey took them through towering spires that seemed to defy gravity, each building a masterpiece of design and light. Hetheran citizens moved about in elegant, flowing motions, that every step purposeful. The sky above glowed with a constant pulse of energy that matched the vibrancy of the city below. "Where are we going?" Elias asked, glancing at his companions. Kayla smirked, but offered no direct answer. "To the arena. You'll see soon enough." Jorah added, "This is where we test the mettle of those who wish to prove themselves." Elias's heart rate quickened. The arena. This was sounding more gladiatorial by the minute. He had envisioned some strange cultural ritual, or perhaps a test of intellect, but the way they spoke made it clear. This trial was going to be a physical one. The hovercraft slowed as they approached a massive structure that dominated the skyline. The arena was a colossal dome, shimmering with translucent panels that reflected the light in a dizzying array of colors. The closer they got, the more Elias could hear the faint hum of a large crowd inside. His gut twisted with a mix of anticipation and anxiety. The vehicle came to a stop, and as the doors slid open, Elias stepped out into the grand courtyard of the arena. Thousands of Hetharans were already gathered, watching as the trio disembarked. Their murmurs filled the air, and Elias could feel the weight of their collective gaze. He wasn't just participating in some private experiment, this was a spectacle. "Do not be alarmed by the audience," Kayla said, noticing his apprehension. "Our people are always eager to witness challenges of strength and endurance. It is part of our culture." "Great," Elias muttered under his breath. "No pressure, then." They were led through an arched gateway into the heart of the arena, where the sound of the crowd grew louder. Inside, the space opened into a massive circular field surrounded by tiered seating. At the center, various structures and obstacles had been set up, some towering, others more intricate. It was like a combination of a jungle gym and an obstacle course, but on an alien scale. The air crackled with energy, and the atmosphere was charged with anticipation. Queen Exara's voice echoed through the arena as she took her place in a raised platform overlooking the field. "People of Hethara, today we witness a rare event. A human will participate in our royal trial. Let us see if the legends of their adaptability and resilience hold true." The crowd cheered, their enthusiasm palpable. Elias swallowed hard, his heart pounding in his chest. He turned to Kayla and Jorah, who now stood with their arms crossed, watching him intently. "What exactly are the rules of this trial?" Elias asked, scanning the alien obstacle course before him. Kayla's smile was cold and challenging. "The rules are simple, human. You must complete each obstacle in sequence. The goal is to demonstrate your adaptability, strength, and endurance. Fail, and the trial ends." Jorah chimed in, her tone softer but no less serious. "But succeed, and you will have earned the respect of the Hepharan Empire, and more." Elias nodded, rolling his shoulders to release the tension building up in them. "All right, let's do this." As he stepped forward onto the starting line, the arena fell silent. The first obstacle loomed before him, an intricate series of swinging beams and rotating platforms suspended above what appeared to be a pool of liquid energy. One wrong step, and he'd be plunging into an unknown, possibly dangerous substance. This wasn't just about physical strength, it was about agility and quick thinking. Taking a deep breath, Elias prepared to face the first of many challenges, knowing that every move he made would be scrutinized by not only the royal family, but an entire civilization. This was more than just a test. It was a matter of honor, for both himself and humanity. And the trial had only just begun. The trial of endurance. Elias Carter stood at the edge of the first obstacle, feeling the weight of the thousands of eyes watching his every move. The silence in the arena was eerie, but it only served to sharpen his focus. Before him, the floating platform swayed ever so slightly, suspended above the shimmering pool of energy below. The liquid glowed with an iridescent light, crackling with electricity, definitely not something he wanted to fall into. Stay calm. One step at a time, he reminded himself, tightening his grip on the rough surface of the starting platform. With a deep breath, Elias made his move. The first jump was a leap of faith, sending him hurtling toward the nearest swinging beam. He reached out and grabbed it with both hands, his muscles straining as it swung wildly. The beam was slick, and it took every ounce of strength he had to hold on, but he managed to swing his legs up and secure a foothold. The crowd gasped, clearly impressed by his dexterity. From the royal platform above, Kayla and Zora watched with crossed arms, their eyes fixed on his every move. Elias couldn't tell if they were impressed or merely curious to see how far he would go. With a grunt of effort, Elias swung from the first beam to the next platform. It wobbled under his weight, but he managed to stabilize himself, preparing for the next challenge. The second platform was smaller, more unstable, and the next set of beams rotated slowly, adding an extra layer of difficulty. He had to time his jumps perfectly or risk being flung into the glowing pool below. "Focus," he whispered under his breath, studying the rotating beams and waiting for the right moment. When it came, he launched himself forward, gripping the beam tightly as it spun. His arms burned with the strain, but he held on, swinging his body in rhythm with the beam's rotation. Just as he began to feel comfortable, the beam sped up unexpectedly, throwing off his balance. For a split second, he dangled by one arm, feeling gravity tug at him viciously. The energy pool below crackled ominously, and for a terrifying moment, Elias thought he might lose his grip entirely. But then something kicked in, something primal. Gritting his teeth, Elias swung his legs back up and clamped onto the beam with a fierce determination. His heart pounded in his chest as he regained his footing and prepared for the next leap. The crowd erupted in cheers, the sound nearly deafening. He allowed himself a brief smirk. He was still in this. The next jump required more precision. The final platform was smaller still, and the gap between them was wide. Elias crouched, measuring the distance, knowing that if he misjudged, he'd either overshoot and miss the platform entirely or undershoot and fall into the electric liquid below. Neither option sounded appealing. He inhaled deeply, steadying his nerves, and then he jumped. Time seemed to slow as he sailed through the air, arms outstretched toward the platform. His fingertips grazed the edge, and for a split second, he felt his heart stop. But then his fingers found purchase, and he pulled himself up with a triumphant surge of adrenaline. He made it. As Elias stood on the final platform, panting, he looked up at the royal platform. Kaiva's lips curled into a slight smile, and Jorah gave a nod of acknowledgement. But this was only the beginning. He could sense that much. The real trial hadn't even started yet. Suddenly, a loud, grinding noise echoed through the arena. The floor shifted, revealing a new section of the obstacle course. This part was far more intimidating, a towering wall of jagged, crystalline spikes that jutted out at odd angles. And beyond that, a series of spinning blades and flame-spewing vents lined the path ahead. Of course, Elias muttered, shaking his head. It wouldn't be a proper trial without death traps. He took a moment to gather his strength before approaching the crystalline wall. The spikes were sharp, glittering dangerously in the alien light, and he had to navigate them without getting impaled. His mind raced, scanning for a path through the maze of deadly protrusions. There was no clear route. He would have to rely on instinct and agility. As he reached for the first handhold, he felt the cold, sharp edge of the crystal beneath his fingertips. His muscles tensed as he hoisted himself up, carefully weaving between the spikes. His body ached with the effort, and every movement had to be deliberate, precise. One wrong step, one miscalculation, and he'd be skewered. The crowd watched in silence, their collective breath held as Elias climbed higher and higher. Sweat dripped from his brow, and his arms burned with exertion, but he refused to slow down. Halfway up the wall, a spike grazed his arm, slicing through his sleeve and drawing blood. He winced but kept going. There was no time to stop, no time to second-guess himself. After what felt like an eternity, Elias reached the top of the crystalline wall. He paused for a moment, taking in the view from the top. Below him, the deadly obstacle course stretched out like a battlefield, and beyond that, the endless sea of Hetharan spectators. He could see their faces now, a mix of awe and disbelief. A human had made it this far. But there was no time to rest. The next challenge awaited. Elias descended from the wall, landing on a narrow platform that led directly into the gauntlet of spinning blades. The air was thick with heat, and the hiss of the flame vents echoed around him. This was going to require both speed and timing. One wrong move, and he'd either be sliced to ribbons or roasted alive. He watched the blades spin, their rhythm almost hypnotic. They moved in a perfect sequence, giving him only a split second to make it through. The flame vents were more unpredictable, spitting fire at random intervals. He had to stay light on his feet and be ready to dodge at a moment's notice. Just like back on Earth, he whispered to himself, recalling the agility drills he had once trained for. Only this time, it's a little more intense. He sprinted forward, ducking under the first set of blades, his body narrowly missing the sharp edges. The heat from the flame vents licked at his skin, but he rolled out of the way just in time. He leaped over the next set of spinning blades, his body twisting midair as he avoided a burst of flame that erupted beside him. His breath came in ragged gasps, but he kept moving. The final stretch was the most dangerous. A series of high-speed rotating blades combined with flames that shot up from the ground in unpredictable bursts. Timing was everything. Elias took a deep breath, eyes fixed on the deadly gauntlet ahead. And then, with a burst of speed, he darted forward. He ducked, rolled, leaped, and twisted his way through the blades and flames with an almost inhuman precision. His body was a blur of motion, his reflexes honed to perfection by years of training and survival instincts. Finally, he reached the other side, collapsing onto the platform in a heap. His chest heaved, and his muscles screamed in protest, but he had made it. He had survived. The arena exploded in cheers, the sound deafening. Elias looked up at the royal platform, where Kayla and Jorah now stood, their expressions unreadable. Queen Sarah, too, had risen from her seat, watching him with a mixture of surprise and admiration. But Elias knew that this was only the beginning. The true test, the one that would determine his fate, was still to come. The Queen's proposition. As the roar of the arena faded, Elias struggled to his feet, his body aching from the grueling ordeal. Sweat soaked his clothes, his muscles trembled, and his lungs burned with every breath. But despite the pain, a sense of triumph surged through him. He had survived the impossible trial. For a brief moment, he allowed himself to savor the victory, feeling the eyes of thousands upon him. The crystalline walls of the arena shimmered in the alien sunlight, casting long shadows over the vast chamber. Above, Queen Sarah's grand platform loomed like an imposing throne, her expression inscrutable. Flanking her, Kayla and Zora exchanged glances, their earlier smirks replaced with genuine curiosity. Elias had proven that humans were more than just the weak, inferior species they had expected. A low hum filled the arena as a transport platform descended from the royal balcony. Elias watched it come down slowly, floating in the air on unseen energy. His heart quickened. Whatever came next wasn't just about survival. It would be about something far more significant. The platform landed gracefully in front of him, and the Queen's voice echoed across the arena, amplified by the advanced technology of her realm. Human approach. Elias wiped the sweat from his brow and cautiously stepped onto the transport platform. It rose smoothly, carrying him toward the royal dais, where Queen Sarah sat like a figure carved from stone. Her sapphire eyes gleamed with intelligence, but there was an undercurrent of mystery in her gaze that Elias couldn't quite decipher. She was taller than any human woman, with a slender, graceful frame draped in flowing silver robes that shimmered as though they were alive. A crown of glowing energy rested atop her head, marking her authority as absolute. As the platform docked at the dais, Elias stepped forward. He stood before the Queen, a mere human surrounded by alien grandeur, but he refused to shrink under her gaze. He had made it this far, and he wasn't about to falter now. Queen Axelra raised a hand, silencing the lingering whispers of the arena. The air was thick with tension as her gaze locked onto Elias, scrutinizing him as if trying to peer into his very soul. "You have done what few have ever achieved," Axelra said, her voice regal and measured. "No outsider has ever survived the trial of endurance, yet here you stand." Elias swallowed hard, unsure of how to respond. He could feel the weight of the Queen's authority pressing down on him, but he forced himself to remain composed. "I wasn't about to go down without a fight," he said, his voice steady. A faint smile tugged at the corners of Sarah's lips, though it didn't reach her eyes. Human tenacity, it is both admirable and dangerous. There was a pause, a long silence, where the Queen seemed to weigh her next words carefully. Elias couldn't help but wonder what was going through her mind. Was this another test? Was she impressed, suspicious? Before he could puzzle it out, Axelra spoke again. "I have a proposition for you, human." Elias blinked, caught off guard. "A proposition?" "Indeed," the Queen replied, leaning forward slightly. Her sapphire eyes gleamed with an intensity that made Elias' skin prickle. "You see, the trial of endurance was not merely a spectacle for the amusement of my people. It was a means to an end. A way to identify those worthy of serving the Hetharan Empire." Elias' mind raced. What exactly was she offering? His first instinct was to refuse, to distrust the Queen's words. After all, he had been dragged into this situation against his will, forced into an alien trial of life and death. But something about her tone, about the gravity in her gaze, made him hesitate. "What kind of service are you talking about?" Elias asked cautiously. Sidira's gaze never wavered. "The Hetharan Empire is vast, spanning worlds and systems beyond your comprehension. But even empires are not without threats. We are beset by enemies, both external and internal. And it is in these turbulent times that we seek individuals of unique ability. Individuals who can think outside the rigid structures of our society. Humans, as it turns out, possess a certain unpredictability that we find valuable." Elias frowned, trying to decipher her meaning. "You want me to be, what? A soldier, an agent?" Cyrus' smile widened slightly. More than that, I want you to be a champion of the Empire, a warrior who answers only to me, a human representing the strength and resilience of your kind, standing alongside my most trusted advisors and warriors. The offer hung in the air like a shimmering jewel, tempting and dangerous in equal measure. Elias could feel the weight of the decision pressing on him. On one hand, accepting would mean aligning himself with the Hepharan Empire, an empire that had, moments ago, tried to kill him. But on the other hand, it was an opportunity like no other. To rise above his station, to become something greater than a mere earthling lost in a vast alien universe. He could sense the eyes of Kayla and Jorah on him, and from the corner of his vision, he saw their expressions shift ever so slightly. They were interested, perhaps even concerned. Elias cleared his throat, trying to gather his thoughts. And if I refuse? Cyrus' expression didn't change, but her tone grew colder. If you refuse, you will be allowed to leave the arena alive. You will return to the galaxy as you were, an anonymous human, adrift and alone. But know this, the galaxy is a dangerous place for those without power. Should you leave here today without my protection, you may not survive the trials that await you. It was a thinly veiled threat, but Elias wasn't naive. He had been through enough to know that power and survival were often intertwined in the harsh realities of the cosmos. The Hepharan Empire, for all its grandeur, played by the same rules. Strength was respected, and weakness was exploited. For a long moment, Elias remained silent, weighing his options. He could feel the entire arena holding its breath, waiting for his answer. But in the end, he knew what he had to do. "All right," Elias said finally, his voice firm. "I'll accept your proposition." Queen Exara's eyes gleamed with satisfaction. Wise choice, human. As if on cue, Kayla and Jorah stepped forward, flanking the queen as she rose from her throne. The moment was ceremonial, heavy with significance. Exara raised her hand, and a glowing crystalline device materialized in her palm, a symbol of her authority and power. "With this, I bestow upon you the rank of champion," Exara declared, her voice carrying across the arena. "You shall serve the Empire, answer to me, and represent humanity in our greatest battles. Do you swear to uphold this oath?" Elias hesitated only for a second before nodding. "I swear." A flash of light erupted from the device, and for a brief moment, Elias felt a surge of energy flow through him. His vision blurred, and his body tingled with newfound strength. The arena erupted in applause, the sound of thousands cheering in unison. But Elias' mind was already racing, wondering what he had just gotten himself into. As the crowd celebrated, Exara leaned in close, her voice a low whisper meant only for him. "Welcome to the Empire, champion. Your first task begins tomorrow." A dangerous alliance. The grand celebration that filled the arena was a deafening cacophony of cheers, applause, and reverence for their newly appointed champion. But to Elias, the sound was hollow. He stood on the elevated platform, Queen Sora at his side, and though he tried to soak in the moment, his mind raced with questions and doubts. The energy that had surged through him when he accepted the Queen's offer still hummed faintly beneath his skin, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he had just made a pact with forces far beyond his understanding. As the last of the spectators were escorted from the arena, the crystal gates sealed with a faint shimmer of light. The deafening cheers faded into a distant murmur, leaving Elias alone with the Queen and her entourage. Kayla and Zora, the Queen's twin daughters, lingered near their mother, their piercing gazes locked on Elias. They hadn't said a word since his induction as champion, but their silence was louder than any insult they could have hurled. Queen Exara turned to face Elias, her expression unreadable. The ceremonial mask of grandeur she wore in front of her people melted away, replaced by something colder, more calculating. "Now that the formalities are over, we can speak plainly," she said, her voice dropping to a low, authoritative tone. Elias stiffened, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. Speak plainly about what? Clara gestured toward a crystalline table that had materialized near the platform's edge. On it lay a detailed projection of the galaxy, with several key points highlighted in red. About the true nature of your role, she replied, tapping one of the glowing red dots with her long, elegant fingers. The point expanded, revealing an intricate system of planets and stations. The Hethoran Empire is not as invincible as it seems. Our borders are constantly under threat, from insurgents, rival factions, and ancient enemies who seek to reclaim what we've built. Elias studied the projection, his eyes narrowing at the sheer scope of it. So, what? You want me to fight in your wars? Be your errand boy across the galaxy? Clara's eyes flashed with something between amusement and warning. Not quite. I want you to be the face of something new, an alliance between our peoples. Humanity is young compared to most of the species within this galaxy, but your potential is undeniable. What you accomplished in the arena today is proof of that, and while I find your unpredictability troublesome, it is precisely that quality that makes you invaluable. Elias folded his arms across his chest, his skepticism evident. And how exactly does this alliance benefit humanity? I'm guessing there's more to this than just me running around fighting off your enemies. Clara inclined her head slightly, acknowledging his point. Astute, as always. Yes, there is more. The Hethoran Empire is prepared to offer humanity access to technology, resources, and knowledge that would take your species centuries to develop on its own. In exchange, I ask for loyalty and cooperation. Humanity will stand with us, and in return, you will rise in power and influence. Elias considered her words carefully. The offer was undeniably tempting. Humanity had always been the underdog, struggling to carve out its place among the stars. To have access to the vast wealth of knowledge and technology that the Hetharans possessed could change everything. But there was also a catch, one that Elias couldn't ignore. And what happens if we don't agree to this alliance? Elias asked, his tone edged with caution. The Queen's smile was cold and sharp, like the edge of a blade. Then humanity will continue to exist as it always has, on the fringes of galactic society, vulnerable to forces far beyond its control. You will remain small, insignificant, and when the time comes, you will fall. Elias' jaw tightened. It was an ultimatum, thinly veiled as an offer of partnership. He had seen it before, powerful empires using diplomacy as a tool of control. Still, Elias knew he wasn't in a position to negotiate. Not yet. Fine, he said finally, his voice steady. I'll play along for now, but I'm not your puppet. If this is going to work, humanity gets a say in how things are run. Clara's eyes gleamed with approval. Of course, I wouldn't have it any other way. With that, she turned and motioned for Kayla and Jorah to approach. The twin daughters of the Queen moved with an unnatural grace, their flowing robes barely stirring as they glided toward Elias. Their eyes identical pools of molten silver, fixed on him with an intensity that made his skin prickle. You will not be alone in your task, champion, Exira said, her voice laced with an edge of command. Kayla and Jorah will accompany you on your missions. They are my most trusted advisors and warriors. Together, you ensure the success of this alliance. Elias looked between the two sisters, noting the subtle tension in their stances. It was clear that they weren't thrilled about the idea of working with him, but they kept their disdain well hidden behind carefully crafted masks of indifference. Kayla was the first to speak, her voice as smooth and cold as glass. We will assess your capabilities, human. Do not think for a moment that the trial in the arena means you have earned our trust. Jorah nodded in agreement, her tone equally frosty. Our mother may see potential in you, but we are not so easily swayed. Elias met their gazes without flinching. I didn't ask for your trust. I only care about getting the job done. For a moment, the tension between them seemed to crackle in the air like static, but then Queen Thyra raised a hand, silencing the unspoken challenge. You will all need to put aside your differences, she said, her voice brokering no argument. The first mission is already in motion. A faction of insurgents known as the Reborn seeks to destabilize the Empire by attacking key infrastructure in the outer systems. You will travel to the planet Varric and eliminate their leader. Elias frowned. A leader? You're sending us halfway across the galaxy to take out one guy? Cyrus' gaze darkened. This is no ordinary leader. The Reborn are led by one of the most dangerous beings in the galaxy, an exile named Thalra, a former warlord who once served the Empire. He knows our tactics, our weaknesses, and he will stop at nothing to see us fall. If he is not dealt with, the consequences could be catastrophic. Elias felt a chill run down his spine. Thalra. The name sounded familiar, like a ghost from the past. He had heard whispers of the warlord during his time on the fringes of galactic society, stories of a ruthless commander who had brought entire star systems to their knees. If Axira was afraid of him, then this mission was far more dangerous than she was letting on. And you're sure we can handle this? Elias asked, his voice heavy with doubt. Cyrus' smile returned, though it was colder than before. I have faith in my daughters, and in you, champion. Do not fail me. The Queen's words hung in the air like a warning, and Elias knew that the stakes were higher than ever. Failure was not an option, not when the fate of humanity and the Hetharan Empire rested on their shoulders. As the platform descended, Elias exchanged a glance with Kayla and Jorah. They were no longer just rivals. They were allies in a dangerous game, one that would determine the future of not just the Empire, but of humanity itself. And Elias had never felt more uncertain about the path ahead. Shadows of betrayal. The journey to the planet Varric was fraught with tension. As their starship, the Nova Echo, cut through the vastness of space, Elias found himself sitting in the command center alongside Queen Asera's daughters, Kayla and Jorah. Each second stretched into eternity as they prepared for the mission that would define their uneasy alliance. The ship hummed with a low energy, its sleek design betraying nothing of the chaos that awaited them on the surface of Varric. Elias glanced at the view screen, where the swirling blue-green orb of Varric grew larger. The planet was known for its dense jungles, thick fog, and a network of underground tunnels that housed the remnants of an ancient civilization. He could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. This was more than just a mission. It was a chance to prove humanity's worth in a galaxy that often saw them as nothing more than a curiosity. Ready for this? Kayla asked, her voice sharp and cutting through the thick silence. Her silver eyes fixed on him, challenging him to respond. Elias shrugged, trying to mask the tension in his shoulders. I'm not the one who needs convincing. You both seem to think I'm a liability. Jorah leaned forward, her expression a mixture of skepticism and curiosity. You need to understand, human. This is not a game. Thalra is dangerous, his tactics are unpredictable, and he has an army that will stop at nothing to protect him. We cannot afford any mistakes. I get that, Elias replied, feeling the frustration bubble beneath the surface. But we're in this together now, right? We need to trust each other if we want to get out alive. Trust is earned, Kayla said bluntly, her gaze unwavering. And so far, you've done nothing to earn ours. Before Elias could retort, a warning chime echoed through the ship's cabin. The ship's AI, a smooth, ethereal voice named Ether, interrupted their exchange. Approaching planetary atmosphere, prepare for descent in T-5 minutes. Elias took a deep breath, pushing aside his growing anxiety. Let's focus on the mission. Once we land, we need to find Thalra and eliminate him before we can mobilize his forces. We can settle the trust issues later. As the ship pierced through the clouds, the vibrant landscapes of Varric unfolded beneath them. Lush jungles spread out like a green carpet, dotted with ancient ruins that hinted at a once great civilization. As they broke through the cloud cover, the ship shook violently, and a series of alarms blared. Stabilizers are malfunctioning, Either announced, the calm voice at odds with the chaos. initiating emergency landing protocols. Elias gripped the console, his heart racing as he watched the ground rush toward them. What the hell is happening? Kayla and Jorah shared a quick glance, their previous animosity momentarily forgotten as they focused on the task at hand. "We need to take manual control," Jorah shouted, her voice cutting through the panic. "On it," Elias replied, thrusting himself forward. With a few deft maneuvers, he wrested control of the ship from the failing systems, pulling up just before they hit the ground. The impact was jarring, but they had landed, albeit hard. Dust swirled around the ship as silence settled in. "Status report," Elias barked, still gripping the controls tightly. "Systems are operational, but landing gear is compromised," Aether replied. "We are unable to take off again without repairs." "Great," Elias muttered, forcing himself to remain focused. "Kayla, Jorah, let's gear up and head out. We need to scout the area and assess the situation." The three of them gathered their equipment, a mix of Hetheran technology and human ingenuity. They donned protective gear, and as Elias secured his belt, he felt the weight of the weapon strapped to his thigh. It wasn't just a tool, it was a symbol of the responsibility he bore, one that would either lead to success or doom. Once they were ready, they stepped out into the humid air of Varek. The heat hit them like a wave, wrapping around them as they exited the ship. Elias surveyed their surroundings, taking in the thick, emerald foliage and the towering ancient structures that peeked through the trees. The jungle was alive with the sounds of alien wildlife, chirps, growls, and rustling leaves, but he knew that silence often preceded danger. "Stay alert," he whispered, leading the way into the dense underbrush. "We don't know how far Thalra's influence reaches." As they ventured deeper, the atmosphere shifted. Shadows danced between the trees, and Elias could feel a sense of being watched. He glanced over his shoulder at Kayla and Jorah, who moved with a grace that belied their tension. They had not spoken since leaving the ship, their minds clearly racing with the weight of what lay ahead. "I can't shake this feeling," Jorah finally broke the silence. "We're being followed." Elias scanned their surroundings, his instincts kicking in. "We need to move faster then. If Thalra has scouts out here, they'll report back before we even get close." The three of them pressed forward, navigating the thick underbrush and avoiding areas that felt too exposed. As they climbed higher into the terrain, they reached a ridge that overlooked a sprawling valley. From their vantage point, they could see the remnants of a settlement, crumbling stone structures, vines creeping up their sides, and in the center, a makeshift camp filled with activity. "There," Elias pointed, his heart pounding in his chest. "That looks like it could be Thalra's base." "Let's get closer," Kayla urged, her voice tense with determination. They descended carefully, using the natural cover of the landscape to conceal their movements. The camp came into sharper focus as they approached, revealing armed guards patrolling the perimeter. Thalra had built a small fortress in the ruins of an ancient civilization, and it was clear he was prepared for a fight. As they settled into position behind a cluster of rocks, Elias activated his communicator. "Aether, can you scan the area and provide us with an overview of their defenses?" "Scanning now," Aether replied. "Please hold." Kayla pulled out a pair of binoculars, peering through the lenses to get a closer look. "They have more forces than I anticipated," she muttered, her brow furrowing. "We'll need a plan to engage." Suddenly, Aether's voice broke through the static. "I have the data. There are approximately 30 insurgents stationed within the camp, including 2 heavily armed guards at the entrance." Elias clenched his fists, his heart racing. "We can't go in guns blazing. We need to create a distraction and draw them out." Jorah nodded in agreement. "I can use my abilities to manipulate the shadows and create an illusion on the opposite side of the camp. It should draw their attention." "Perfect. While they're occupied, we'll slip in and find Thalra," Elias said, his confidence building. "Let's do this." As Zora prepared her illusion, Kayla and Elias took positions, readying their weapons and bracing for the oncoming chaos. Zora closed her eyes, focusing her energy. A moment later, the air shimmered, and a flickering shadow emerged, mimicking the movements of several figures. It danced toward the far edge of the camp, drawing the attention of the guards. "Now," Elias shouted, taking the lead as he and Kayla sprinted toward the entrance. As they neared the camp, the guards turned their heads, drawn away by the distraction Zora had created. With a swift motion, Elias tackled one of the guards, taking him by surprise. The two tumbled to the ground, and Elias quickly disarmed him, twisting the weapon from his grasp. "Get the other one," he shouted at Kayla, who was already engaged in a fierce battle with the second guard. Their movements were fluid, a mix of training and instinct, and within moments, the guards lay unconscious at their feet. "Quickly, we need to find Thalra," Kayla urged, scanning the area for any signs of the warlord. They moved through the camp, adrenaline pumping through their veins. The illusion was beginning to fade, and the remaining insurgents were starting to realize they'd been tricked. Elias felt a thrill of exhilaration as they advanced deeper into the ruins, but it was quickly overshadowed by a sense of urgency. Suddenly, a loud shout rang through the air, echoing off the stone walls. "Intruders, sound the alarm." Elias' heart dropped. They had to find Thalra before the entire camp descended upon them. "This way," he yelled, leading Kayla and Zora toward the largest structure at the center of the camp. The three of them burst through the entrance, entering a dimly lit chamber adorned with strange symbols and artifacts. In the center of the room stood Thalra, tall, imposing, and draped in dark, flowing garments that gave him an air of authority. His eyes glinted with malice as he turned to face them, a smirk playing on his lips. "So, the mighty Hetharan Queen sends her champion to confront me," Thalra said, his voice smooth and mocking. "How quaint." Elias tightened his grip on his weapon, adrenaline surging through his veins. "This ends now, Thalra. You'll answer for your crimes against the Empire and humanity." Thalra's laughter echoed off the walls. "You think you can stop me? I've built an empire from the ashes of your kind. You are nothing but a pawn in a game you do not understand." Kayla stepped forward, her posture rigid and ready for combat. "Your reign of terror is over. We won't allow you to threaten our people any longer." In an instant, Thalra's demeanor shifted. He drew a weapon, its surface glimmering with an energy that pulsed ominously. "You are naive to believe you can challenge me here. I will enjoy making an example of you." Elias exchanged a glance with Kayla and Zora, a shared understanding igniting between them. They had come too far to turn back now. As Thalra charged at them, the chamber erupted into chaos, and they found themselves embroiled in a fight that would determine not just their fates, but the fate of humanity itself. The battle was fierce. Thalra was fast and skilled, using the terrain to his advantage. Elias ducked under a swing of the warlord's weapon, returning fire with his own, but Thalra seemed almost to anticipate his moves, weaving around the blasts effortlessly. "Is this the best the Hetharans can send?" Thalra taunted, launching himself at Elias with a ferocity that sent him stumbling back. "I expected more from the supposed champion." Elias gritted his teeth, feeling a surge of determination. "You won't win this fight," he yelled, dodging another strike as he repositioned himself. "We're not afraid of you." Zora, finding an opening, tapped into her shadow manipulation. Tendrils of darkness reached out, wrapping around Thalra's legs, momentarily immobilizing him. "Now, Elias," she shouted, giving him the chance to regroup. With newfound resolve, Elias took a deep breath, focusing on the moment. He aimed carefully and pulled the trigger, the blast hitting Thalra square in the chest, knocking him back against the wall. But as he fell, Thalra's expression twisted into a furious snarl. "You think you can defeat me so easily? I will not go down without a fight," he roared, summoning an aura of dark energy that crackled around him. The room shook with the force of his anger. Elias felt the ground tremble beneath his feet as he exchanged a look with Kayla and Jorah. They were all in this together. They had to find a way to end this. "We need to flank him," Elias shouted, rallying them with determination. Kayla nodded, her focus sharp. "I'll draw his attention while you and Jorah go around." Elias didn't hesitate. Kayla charged forward, her weapon blazing, drawing Thalra's ire as Jorah and Elias moved in unison to flank him. As Kayla engaged Thalra directly, Jorah began to channel her energy, creating an illusion of multiple copies of herself, confusing the warlord. "Foolish girl," Thalra spat, swinging at the illusions, only to find them dissipating into shadows. "I can see through your tricks. Can you?" Jorah called back, her voice echoing from different directions. "Or will you fall for your own arrogance?" Elias seized the moment, rushing in from the side. He could see the focus shifting, Thalra's eyes narrowing as he searched for the real threat amidst the illusions. "Now," he yelled, timing it perfectly. With a swift motion, Elias lunged forward, striking hard with a calculated blow. His weapon connected, and Thalra staggered, the energy surrounding him flickering momentarily. "You think this is over?" Thalra gasped, his voice strained as he rallied himself. "I am more than a mere warlord." "Then show us," Kayla challenged, ready for another round. The battle raged on, an intense whirlwind of blows, energy blasts, and shadows intertwining in a chaotic dance. They were pushing Thalra back, but Elias could feel the toll it was taking on them. Each strike seemed to take more energy, more resolve, and he knew they had to end it soon. "Jorah, we need to amplify the distraction," Elias shouted, feeling desperation creep in. "Channel everything you have." With a fierce look, Jorah focused her energy, pulling from the depths of her abilities. Shadows twisted around her, swerving like a storm. "Hold on," she cried, and in an explosion of power, the room filled with darkness, blinding Thalra and scattering his focus. "Now," Elias shouted, his voice ringing with determination. He launched himself at Thalra, now vulnerable in the chaos, and landed a final blow that connected solidly. Thalra staggered, the energy around him flickering as he fell to his knees, a look of shock overtaking his features. No, this cannot be. But it was too late. With one final push, Elias delivered a decisive strike, and Thalra crumpled to the ground, defeated. The oppressive weight of his darkness lifted from the chamber, leaving silence in its wake. Panting heavily, Elias turned to Kayla and Jorah, who were equally breathless. "We did it," he said, disbelief creeping into his voice. "We actually did it." Jorah nodded, a small smile breaking through her earlier tension. "We fought together. That's what matters." Kayla's eyes were fierce, but there was a glimmer of respect now. "Perhaps you're not as useless as I thought." Elias smirked, the adrenaline still coursing through him. "I'll take that as a compliment." But their victory was short-lived. The silence was soon shattered by the sound of alarms blaring outside. "We need to get out of here," Elias urged, urgency creeping into his tone. "The rest of Thalra's forces will be on us any second." As they rushed out of the chamber, they could see the camp in disarray, insurgents scrambling to regroup. "We have to find our ship," Kayla shouted over the chaos. Together, they fought their way through the camp, each of them covering each other as they maneuvered toward the exit. The sounds of blaster fire echoed around them, and the chaos threatened to swallow them whole. "Left," Jorah called, her instincts guiding them as they dodged around a group of insurgents, her illusions providing a brief distraction as they pressed on. Finally, they burst through the perimeter of the camp and sprinted toward the Nova Echo. Elias felt a rush of relief as they reached the ship, but their reprieve was cut short. "They're coming," Kayla shouted, pointing to a squad of insurgents closing in on them. "Get on board," Elias commanded, pushing the door open. "I'll cover you." "No way," Jorah argued, her voice rising with urgency. "We all get out together." "I can't let you risk your lives," Elias shouted back, adrenaline surging as he prepared to hold the line. Just go. But Kaya grabbed his arm, her grip surprisingly firm. We're not leaving you behind, champion. Not after everything we've been through. The squad was closing in, blast of fire lighting up the jungle around them. Elias could see the determination in their eyes and felt something shift within him. Maybe, just maybe, they could make it out together. Fine, he relented, knowing that they had become more than just allies. Let's get out of here. Together, they sprinted up the ramp of the ship, and Elias slammed the door shut behind them. As Kayla took the pilot's seat and Joro worked on powering up the systems, Elias grabbed a blaster and moved to the ship's rear hatch, ready to cover their escape. Come on, Kayla urged, the ship's engines roaring to life as they powered up. Elias fired back at the approaching insurgents, his shots finding their marks. We need to be quick. Almost there, Jorah shouted, her focus unwavering as she navigated through the chaotic controls. With a final push, the ship's engines roared to life, and Kayla punched the controls, lifting off just as the first of the insurgents reached the ship. The ground fell away beneath them, and they shot up into the sky, leaving the chaos behind. As they broke through the atmosphere, Elias let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. They had survived. They had won. I can't believe we actually did it, he said, glancing back at Kayla and Jorah, who shared a look of triumph. But before they could celebrate, Aether interrupted. Warning, multiple ships are tracking us. We are not safe yet. Elias' heart sank. What now? Kayla's expression hardened. We need to outmaneuver them. Prepare for evasive maneuvers. Jorah nodded, her eyes scanning the instruments. I can create a diversion, but we'll need to work together. Let's do this, Elias said, determination flooding his veins once more. They had fought together, now they would escape together. As the enemy ships closed in, the three of them focused on the task at hand. They were no longer just allies, they were a team forged in the fires of battle. Together, they would find a way to ensure the survival of not just themselves, but of humanity and their newfound alliance with the Hethoran Empire. And as they sailed through the stars, they could feel the weight of destiny shifting. The shadows of betrayal were behind them, but the path ahead was still uncertain, filled with challenges they would face as one.